Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crypto with English. Happy Friday. So, I am particularly excited having this guest on today, Paul McNeal, the owner and founder of the Crypto Curator. Now, to give a little bit of a context about this, when I first started, I guess you could say, acquiring knowledge and getting interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency related things, his website and platform was one of the first ones I saw being circulated on social media. So for anybody who's in this space, whether it's on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, you've seen this name before, the Crypto Curator. He does articles, he does daily briefings, he does blogs, vlogs, podcasts, you name it. I've also seen Paul McNeal on many other different podcasts with many different leaders in this space. So for me, this is surreal and an absolute pleasure. Paul, thank you very much for coming on to the show today.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on, man. It's gonna be fun.
Right. And, from reading about your background and following your website, you've been in this space and really keeping tabs as far as which direction the wind is blowing with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency related things since 2011. So that essentially makes you a bona fide veteran, if not like a Merlin in this space at this point.
Exactly. Yeah, I was one of the crazy, I guess, lucky ones to stumble across this. Started paying some attention to it, and yeah, the rest is history.
Right. So I think maybe within the past 2 to 3 years, it seems like more of mainstream culture has been getting interested and maybe hopping on board of this, even if not, let's say, agreeing with the premise of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but at least paying attention to it. So coming onto this at 2011, how did you mentally get there? Because I maybe heard one or two things about it, Bitcoin in 2011, and for 99% of people, dismissed it. Okay, this is just some sort of weird quasi, I guess you could say, digital investment fad, so to say. It was very much dismissed, especially back then. Could you tell me your journey as far as how you got interested in Bitcoin and essentially being one of the few standing by it, especially so early?
Yeah, I live on Twitter. I tell a lot of people that if you can't find me on Twitter, something's probably wrong. Uh, But I came across something from either Max Kai or Trace Mayer. One of those two gentlemen had tweeted out something. And when I saw it, I was like, Bitcoin. I was like, what is this? And so I started doing some searching myself, looking for it. I think one of the first things I came across was a CNBC article, believe it or not. And I actually posted on Facebook and I said, hey, does anybody own any Bitcoin? I think that's what the post was.
Right.
But after listening to it and then after actually taking time to let me actually kill that right now because that's gonna
No worries.
drive me crazy. After listening to it and then reading the white paper, that was really something that got my attention. And so when I began to understand what the white paper was talking about, this peer-to-peer electronic
Right.
currency, I was like, man, I tell you what, I don't think people are paying enough attention to this. So I would begin to try to tell people about it.
Right.
And that's what started my curiosity, kept me in this thing for a while until I grasped it.
Wow. And by the way, I think that's very intuitive and also ballsy at the same time, too, especially given the fact that the original creator, Satoshi, obviously his identity or identities is not known to people. So, I find that very brave of you, if not courageous, to really give this a shot. Of course, based on your own research, as far as the potential for Bitcoin and what it could ultimately mean for, global finance and probably even, you know, being a real solid vehicle for upward mobility. Because I can't think of too many other things right now that really are outside of cryptocurrency.
Right, exactly. And that's what you just mentioned is true. The fact that digital currencies right now and where we are in the world and what's going on in the world when it comes to finance. When Satoshi Nakamoto put that white paper together, he did so because of what was happening with the 2008 crisis and financial crisis. And so when we look at what this group of people or individual or whomever Satoshi Nakamoto is,
Right.
they at that point had been working on a problem. And think about this, folks. When they launched this white paper, many probably years before that, they had been working leading up to this point, to the culmination of that paper coming out, before we actually began to see it and seeing this momentum of where he pushed that paper to him, when he published it, and where we are now, some 13 years later, it's absolutely perfect timing for a technology like that for today. So it's really, this is why I tell people you got to pay attention to this. Even if you don't put anything in it, you
Right.
got to pay attention.
Right. Yeah. And, even going through the white paper myself, not until many, many years later, I'm talking about 2019, early 2020, but going through the white paper later, it really did seem like an antidote to the structural problems, whether here in the US or outside, really a decentralized system where there's no third party, an immutable ledger, a fixed supply of this cryptocurrency, so to say, as a hedge against inflation. And I was catching the headlines this morning. So in 40 years, we are now experiencing the highest level of inflation. So I believe it's at 6.7%. And of course, some people are getting a little skittish because Bitcoin has fallen down to about 47,000 per coin. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, listen, that inflation number we know is way off. Listen, inflation is far higher.
Right.
It's not
right.
It's nuts. And so the fact that Bitcoin is at $47,000, what most people don't understand, it was an actual equation that was put out by a gentleman by the name of Robert Breedlove. And he said this, and when he was on Pump's show and he said this, it really caught my ear, and it's stuck with me ever since. 21 million fixed supply. That's all there'll ever be in Bitcoin. A lot of people say, well, can't you make more? No, you cannot. And the reason you can't is that it's baked into the code. And in order to change the code, it's like changing the Constitution. It's not going to be easy to do.
Right.
So 21 million fixed supply plus massive demand, and basic macroeconomics will tell you what happens next, equals number go up. It just have to. And so what people don't understand is even at $47,000, most people look at that and they go, wow, that's crazy. It's outlandish. But here's the thing I tell them. Back in 2008, it was worth $0. Fast forward 13 years, it's worth $47,000.
Right.
Do the exact same thing again and go 13 years in the future where we'll be north of $1 million. People, you got to pay attention.
Absolutely. I think that's eloquently and well said. Now, being on this since 2011, I can imagine, especially since launching the Crypto Curator, you've experienced many detractors and cynics throughout this process, and especially because you are quite well visible on social media as well. So what are some of the most common, if not typical, rebuttals that come your way? This could be from people in institutional banking. This could be from other different types of individuals, throughout, fintech and related areas.
Yeah, some of the major rebuttals that come my way, and it actually makes sense when you think about it, it's still too difficult. People find it very hard to understand what it is. They find it very hard to use it and get into it. So the UI, UX is still way too complicated for people. I've heard people still say the same thing. It's a Ponzi scheme, Tula bubble. And I'm like, guys, it's been 13 years. Okay, you can keep calling it these things.
Right.
That ship has sailed. So, but yeah, a lot of people, they're just nervous. And what I hear most of all is most people saying things like, oh, I'll just keep my 401k. I'll stay invested in stocks.
401ks, yeah. Because we all know how well those have worked out.
Yeah, not well at all.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And have you been able to win over a lot of people in this process? Let's say, for instance, like friends and family throughout this journey.
Yeah. Yeah, we in crypto we call it being orange pilled, and I can say that I've helped orange pill a few folks, especially my own family. I got my sister and her kids involved in it. Got my brother involved in it. Got my niece involved in it. I'm trying to get her kids involved in it. So I keep trying to tell people again, what I don't want people to do is one thing, just listening to me. That's not good. Here's what I want people to do, and hopefully your listeners will do the same thing. Read what I read, watch what I watch, and listen to what I listen to. And I publish all that stuff every day. So if you consume that content, you're going to know what to do yourself. You don't need me to give you any recommendations or suggestions.
Yeah, and I have to say, as far as the Crypto Curator website, I really do enjoy the layout. And the reason why is this. A lot of times when it comes to getting crypto information, and I experience this, as do many others, there is the sense of being overstimulated and information overload. So I can Google Bitcoin right now, I will encounter 15 to 20 websites, and it's going to be pop-ups, oversaturation of graphics, and for me, I'm like, this just gives me a headache. I need to turn this off. Your website on the Crypto Curator, and like I said, since day one I started this journey, it is very accessible, it's very intuitive, and very straightforward. It's something that I find almost very classic, but also very modern at the same time too. So I look at this, I know exactly what I'm looking at. I know what you're going to be talking about in this article from the headline. So I would even say, from a journalistic point of view, I think you've presented all of this stuff very, very well, to say the least. I think whether you're somebody who's deeply in this space or somebody who's really just getting into it.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. And that was one of my goals in sort of doing that. And as they say, imitation is the best form of flattery. I sort of got a little bit of the way I laid my website out based on Drudge. Drudge
Wow.
is a very popular website. A lot of people visited. I think the guy's got over 1 billion views over the time that he's had this. It's just massive. So what my website, the reason I laid it out that way, was to help people see, one, the breadth of activity happening in the space. And if most people go there, you're going to see a lot of links and a lot of content. But that should tell you this is not just a Ponzi scheme. This is not a fly-by-night deal, right?
Right.
The second part of my site, I put it together because I wanted those categories to help people. If you're just interested in mining, you can go straight to the mining news and look at it. You can scroll straight down to the podcast and see which podcasts have been published today. So I wanted to make it easy from that perspective. But again, and also want to make sure I help keep people away from scams and things like that. So I have a section on controversy. Listen, pay attention to this stuff. Don't get rug pulled. Don't get scammed. So I have good content in there for that reason.
Right. And going through your site, one of the themes I took away is that many are missing the forest for the trees. I think we see that in traditional banking in Wall Street. We even see that with the regulators in Washington, D.C. So as far as missing the forest for the trees, what is DC, and let's say Wall Street to a lesser extent, missing about this? I do feel there's a certain level of tone deafness whenever, I guess you could say, traditional institutions are discussing this.
Yeah, to be honest, Adam, I don't think it's really tone deaf at all. Here's what I think. We've been 13 years into this, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find a legislator or a regulator who isn't aware of digital assets. So if we move that off the table, what I think you have is competing factions and interest, right? You have some of these people. Let's just take, I won't call him by a name that Travis Kling calls him, but Brad Sherman. Right? He is beholden to the banks. He's beholden to an industry that's getting disrupted by this technology. So he's going to fight like heck to make sure people don't go down this path. And so he has a vested interest to make sure he puts misinformation out or disinformation, right? But you will also see that there's a large number of people in Congress. There's a large number of people that's in public policy area that have been tuned into this, and they're starting to dig in. Mayor Suarez down in Florida is now the man of all men.
Indeed.
It's Miami's becoming Bitcoin City.
It has, absolutely. And what is interesting, kind of dovetailing off that, when you look at Warren Buffett, over the years, he seems like one of the most fervent critics of this. And, I understand that, he is a successful entrepreneur and billionaire businessman, but his investments are effectively in traditional, like, blue chip and index stocks. So, for me, I don't see any upward mobility as far as investing in traditional equities and stocks, unless you're a whale, to be honest. I think whereas in Bitcoin, you can really just buy Satoshis on a good day, when there's a dip, and you can really have like a 15 plus return on a good week even.
That's true. And this is where most people fail to realize is that Bitcoin is a fractionalized system. You can buy the smallest unit of a Bitcoin, which is called the Satoshi. And there are 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin. So I can go buy $5 worth of Bitcoin, $10, $25. As a matter of fact, a lot of platforms are designed so they do what's called reoccurring automatic investments, which means that every week you can set it and say, buy $25 worth of Bitcoin, and you don't have to touch the app again. Every week you're going to be buying Bitcoin. That's
Right.
the best way to try to get yourself into this without pushing a lot of money into Bitcoin, not understanding and getting nervous when it goes from 65 to 47. In that, when you start learning this, you'll say, wow, this is a great buying opportunity, and you'll want to buy the dip. And so that's sort of the way I encourage people to do it. Now, there's a lot of other projects outside of Bitcoin, but I tell people, learn Bitcoin first, get your feet wet, and then you might be able to venture out the risk curve some more.
Right. And something I've seen over the past year, so from the traditional banking sector, and not to name names, I've been seeing ETF exchange traded funds tracking Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, for me, looking at it, this really looks like a really half assed lip service type of attempt to maybe make a little bit of more money on something that's kind of growing, but really not dedicating oneself to it. What's your take on these ETFs that are coming out by, let's say, the bigger players on Wall Street?
Yeah, ETFs is a very interesting, it's a double-edged sword. For those who are not well versed in ETFs, and I would be one of them, I know enough to be dangerous. But here's what happens with ETFs is that it allows the big boys in. Listen, the big hedge funds, the big financial institutions, they don't play the way we play with this asset. They are
Right.
in to make a lot of money. They're in it to move markets and things of that nature. So right now, ETFs, there's two different deals that you need to understand. The first is that we only have what they call futures based ETFs, which means it's just cash settled. It's not spot settled, which means if
Right.
someone has a contract for an ETF for Bitcoin, they don't have to actually buy the Bitcoin or sell the Bitcoin. All they do is just cash.
Right.
We've been seeing a big push for spot ETFs, and that's what people want to see come to market, because if the contract closes, they want to be able to say, I can actually buy the actual asset and hold on to it. That's what we're looking for.
Got it. And I think that's very, very well put as far as explaining this, but also explaining what ETFs are as well. So a lot of, I guess you could say, critics and related individuals in this space feel that Ethereum will eventually outperform Bitcoin. Now, granted, there is a huge gap in value between where Bitcoin is per coin versus Ethereum. But the argument I hear posit is that, well, with Ethereum, it is more than, let's say, just a digital asset. It is essentially a platform where you can build decentralized applications on. But here's where the conundrum comes in my head. Now we have Solana, we have Near, we have essentially these other different blockchains that have addressed and, if not eliminated, a lot of the traditional, I guess you could say, gas fee issues that Ethereum has, and even the transaction speed. So I know that's kind of a loaded question, but maybe if we were to kind of take it apart piece by piece, what are your thoughts on at least Ethereum competing with Bitcoin and possibly winning in the long run?
Yeah, there's a lot of sentiment right now about Ethereum flipping Bitcoin, and that's an old conversation that's happened way back in the day. We call it the flippening. And what we
Flipping
mean
it.
by that is when Ethereum flips Bitcoin's market cap. When will that happen? And right now, Ethereum's market cap is sitting about, I think it's a billion. No, let me see real fast. I haven't looked at this recently. Yeah, right now, Ethereum's market cap is about $500 million, and Bitcoin's about, $500 billion, and Bitcoin's almost $1 trillion. So it's about a 50% deal there. Now, a lot of people believe that because of the way Ethereum is moved from proof of work to proof of stake, and
Right.
that's just the consensus that governs that blockchain. One, you use miners, which a lot of people have heard use a lot of power, energy, if it's
Right.
clean or not. Proof of stake doesn't use that at all. But
Right.
the proof of stake consensus, a lot of people in the industry thinks that puts too much power in the hands of the wealthy. So they're like, okay,
Right.
that's not fair. That's sort of the same system we tried to get out of. But
Right.
there's no cap to how many ether there are, because there's an unlimited supply of them. Now, with this most recent development, they've been reducing the supply of Ethereum. That's been pushing the price up. And that's what a lot of people, primarily Raoul Pal, the Winklevoss
Right.
twins, and some other folks in the industry, think that eventually that number is going to go way up, causing the flipping of Bitcoin. But yeah.
Interesting. Awesome. And do you think that Solana, Polkadot, some of these other up and comers, Do you think there's a solid possibility they could displace Ethereum as essentially the DApp platform to essentially build these, upcoming applications that I think we're all going to be using in the very near future, especially with the advent of NFTs and metaverses being thrown into the mix?
Yeah, well, just like they talk about Bitcoin having first mover advantage, I believe Ethereum has had first mover advantage when it comes to the smart contract platform, building dApps on top of
Right.
it. However, I do believe some of the faster players out there, the Solanos, the Polkadots, the Cardanos, I think those platforms are getting built up, and you could eventually see a migration from Ethereum to those as a result of the gas fees. Now, with that being said, Vitalik Buterin is working on what they call EIP, which is Ethereum. I forget the I is protocol. It's improvement Ethereum Improvement Protocol EIP 4488, which is supposed to address the fee issue and reduce the fees. I believe if they can address their fee problem and get the fees low again, a lot of people will remain on Ethereum. But I also believe that you're going to see continued adoption in Solana, Polkadot, and Cardano.
Got it. And moving on from that, so whether it's people who are in the crypto industry or people who are on the outside of it, let's say in traditional financial services, or even just journalists really looking purely from the outside and maybe not having as much expertise, there's always been the critique of Bitcoin as far as mining. I guess you could say the amount of power that is used to essentially, I guess you could say, maintain and operate this entire blockchain, especially as far as being damaging to the environment. Now, I've heard that up and down from, I guess you could say, status quo and I guess you could say alternative news, so to say. However, just rationally thinking about it, if I was to analyze the processes that, let's say, central banks use to print notes, to essentially smelt coinage, I'm thinking to myself, that has to be infinitely more damaging to the environment versus essentially a bunch of decentralized, kind of disconnected nodes sharing the same ledger. So I kind of wanted to know what your rebuttal and thoughts are regarding that, because even to this day, I still hear about that, and I could even think, if I was to maybe look at the energy output and environmental output of factories that even, let's say, make my coffee mug, for instance, that might actually be more damaging to the soil and water beneath us, so to say.
It's true. To address this mining issue, this power consumption issue, a Bitcoin mining council was formed. Michael Saylor is part of that council. Marty Bent is part of that council from the Great American Power Mining Company. And others are involved in trying to address this. And what they found is that Bitcoin is like literally a sliver of the power consumption of the global power consumption, right? So the reality is that it's a narrative that's being driven, and I don't know who actually is trying to drive this narrative, but it's been addressed. And a lot of Bitcoin mining is now clean energy. A lot of the Bitcoin mining has moved from China, that it was done dirty coal. Now it's here in the U.S. and Texas, my state. But Texas is doing a lot of mining.
Oh, yeah.
Some mining. Mining's all over the place. So we're starting to see a more cleaner environment for Bitcoin mining, and the power consumption is not as much as people think it is. So I think that's a narrative that's going to go away soon. Mining continues to increase. As a matter of fact, we just crossed the all-time high for hash power. And as Max Kaiser says, price follows hash rate. So if a hash rate's at all-time high, price is going to follow.
Great. And you mentioned Texas, your home state. So just from browsing the news, but it looks like Texas is going to be the next major hotspot of cryptocurrency and blockchain projects in the US, especially starting in the major cities. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, Texas is really doing a lot. We saw our Senator, Ted Cruz, which not a huge fan of Ted, but hey, Ted, you really are. He's really advocating for blockchain technology. He clearly understands the mining advantage and what it can do for Texas. And so he's trying to pull the miners into Texas. As a matter of fact, Texas is working with ERCOT, which is the power grid there in Texas. And they're trying to ensure that this winter, we don't see a repeat of last winter. And Bitcoin mining can actually help with that process. So I think Texas can do a lot. It can go far with this if the rest of the legislature get on board and help with this process, because right now, to be honest, Florida is truly killing it. As a matter of fact,
Right.
DeSantis just came out today and was talking about paying, I think it was with the actual state paying in crypto and things that are actually adopting this technology.
Right.
So it's going to be a battle between Florida and Texas.
Right. And, I could especially imagine with Bitcoin, this technology is also a nice segue into sustainable energy as well. And especially if you look at states like Texas, it seems to be a very business friendly, tax friendly environment for this. So it really seems to be the next incubator for a lot of maybe what should have otherwise or maybe historically been coming out of Silicon Valley might be coming out of Austin. It might be coming out of Houston. It might be coming out of another region of Texas, quite soon, to say the least.
It's true. And Texas has the Texas Blockchain Association, which have been doing a great job at holding some events, educating the policymakers, educating regulators there in Texas. Again, I think it's just a matter of time. One of the things that people don't understand with this is that this really is a truly transformational technology. And as much as we all would like for it to be done now, it's not. It's going to take another 10, 20 years for this to really mature. And we're seeing so many different ecosystems come into this as well. So I think people need to be patient with this technology. I think they need to educate themselves and listen and not jump to a lot of conclusions.
Very interesting. As far as the advent of meme coins, now this has been a hot topic for this past year, and one of them that has seemed to have been very enduring is Shiba Inu coin. It seems to be the meme coin that doesn't die, but as time goes on, it seems to be accruing a lot of credibility, to say the very least. So I wanted to know your thoughts on meme coins. Now, it all started with Dogecoin. Now, essentially, we have this collection and array of Japanese dog-themed meme coins, and now others as well. So I kind of wanted to know what some of your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, listen, I tell a lot of people I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, even though a lot of people might say I'm a maximalist, but I'm not. But I will tell you this: when this stuff first started, any maximalist will tell you right away, we dismiss it. We call them poop coins. I won't use that.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, you see things like this, and especially when you get people like Elon Musk and Mark Cuban, they're jumping on board.
Right.
It's a great marketing scheme. But if you begin to look close to the technology and the teams that's working with this stuff, there is some traction. I'm starting to see, just through the news that I curate, a lot of people are adopting for payment. AMC, right? Newegg just started to accept it. When you get businesses starting to accept a digital asset and the asset continues to gain traction amongst users buying it, there's something more to it. So the meme coins, they're out there. I mean, Shiba Inu, Floki Inu.
Right, Floki Inu as well, yeah.
It's all a Floki front puppy, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, and it seems like with a lot of meme coins, there is a formula. And it looks to me they all have a strong community on social media. So doing my own due diligence, Shiba Inu coin, they have a Telegram group that is very strong, has a lot of members. I go on Twitter, I go on Instagram. It seems to me there is a way to make these meme coins success, and I think a lot of their ultimate progress is going to be as good as their community that's behind them, at the very least.
It's true. And if you get some, we call them whales, but if you get some deep-pocketed individuals who have a lot of money and they want to begin to push these assets around, they will. So what I tell people, as much as we like these meme coins and we enjoy talking about them, and because they're fun, but just understand, if you're committing any capital to it, you can't fall in love with this stuff and hodl it forever. And I mean, maybe you can. It just depends on where you are, and everybody's case is different. So I'll just say, understand what it's all about and be careful, because there's nothing worse than getting rug pulled or having some project tank on you that you thought was going to the moon.
Right. And with the issue of Dogecoin, I wanted to know from you, would you consider it in the same way as other meme coins as we described, or as an outlier? And the reason why I ask is this. So it looks to me that Dogecoin, especially given that it doesn't have a fixed supply, but it's also heavily influenced by whales, Elon Musk, as you mentioned. So since Dogecoin came onto the scene much earlier, and it seems to have larger whales that participate and even own the supply, what do you think of its ultimate success? Do you think Dogecoin will always be essentially this poop coin that's going to be, at like between like 15 and 35 cents? Or do you think it could really go beyond that eventually?
Yeah, no, what people have to understand is a little bit of market cap, how many actually exist. Some of these projects are trillion dollar, I mean, not trillion dollar, they have trillions of these assets.
Right.
In order for a trillion asset, you have trillion units of an asset like that. In order for it to go to $1, you're talking a massive increase in the price, the market cap of that asset, which means that it just trounces Bitcoin and everything else in its wake. It
Got
probably
it.
won't happen. And for the other reasons that it's a manipulated market, a lot of whales are pushing the price around so they can make money on it.
Right.
I think these projects will stay around, though. I don't think they're going to die because these projects are double-digit billion-dollar market cap assets. And for those to go away, it won't happen. So again, there's volatility. There's room to make money if you understand what you're doing.
Right.
And in the meantime, we just have fun and watch them and see how far it goes.
Wonderfully put. And as far as the future of, let's say, the US dollar, the British pound, the euro, these traditional currencies, where do you think their place will be in 20 years? Because obviously it seems like the institutions want to hold on to these as much as possible. And to be honest, for me, you look at something like Bitcoin, there's a fixed supply. And you know what? I think the collateral is the free market and all of the users that participate in it. As far as the collateral that backs up our economy and the other major economies, there's nothing. There's essentially a giant press that generates notes. So will society get to the point where there's going to have to be some major financial reform across the board? Because with the way things are, upward mobility is gradually diminishing, and if not, it might be close to impossible in the years to come.
Yeah. So when it comes to other currencies, I think we will begin to see other, especially the smaller nations, those currencies begin to fade away. Look at what just happened in El Salvador. You had the president down there. He decided, and Congress agreed with him, and they decided to make Bitcoin legal tender right alongside the U.S. dollar. Because now the good thing about El Salvador is that they didn't have a currency. The dollar was the currency. So now they had this competing currency with the dollar. And I saw an article today that a lot of nations are starting to de-dollarize, which means they're starting to get off the dollar standard. As we see this continue to happen, I think the dollar will always maintain the reserve standard for now. But in another 20 years, I think that whole game changes. I think Bitcoin begins to take over. Now, will some of these other assets become some type of a currency? I don't think so, because look what happened in Miami and New York. They're coming out with city coins. Now Miami has city coins, New York has city coins. We're seeing the entire changing of the financial landscape. And to be honest, again, where this goes, no one knows. But hey, let's keep watching. It's fun.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And speaking of El Salvador, in my research and just watching the news, I seem to come across two camps. Some people are completely bullish when it comes to El Salvador and its ultimate success. And then others are like, whoa, I think they're doing this a little too fast. But I have to say, I respect the fervor and I think the courage to do that in this day and age, especially with the lockdown. So I wanted to know your take on El Salvador and their ultimate success on this. And right now, it seems like they are gaining momentum so far from this. And I'd imagine there's going to be blips and hiccups as in anywhere. But, anyway, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, again, and I tell a lot of people, listen, I think it's Nayib Bukele. Yeah,
yes, the president, yeah.
I don't really know his politics. Is he a good guy? Is he a dictator? I don't know his politics that well, but I do know that he has understood what this asset is and how to actually leverage it. And so from that perspective, I think El Salvador is going to show the rest of the world what it really means to adopt a Bitcoin standard, which is a book that was written by, and I'm going to forget the author's name now, he'll kill me. But yeah, the Bitcoin standard, So with volcano power, they're going to power Bitcoin miners.
That's
That's going
right.
to
Yes.
produce
Volcano powering. Yeah.
volcano
Which I
power.
think
So
is
that's
great.
as good as you can get. So
Yeah.
volcano power making money, and they're going to take that money and they're going to wind up making a Bitcoin city there in El Salvador. They just launched a
That's
Bitcoin
right. They did.
bond
Yeah.
for the city. That bond is $1 billion bond. Half of that bond is going to be invested into Bitcoin directly. The other half of that Bitcoin bond is going to be going to build the city itself. So we're watching a real live experiment of what it means to adopt it. Now, when we see success from this, and then they will see success, I believe, you're going to find other smaller nations do the exact same thing. And the playbook's been written. So
Right.
now they just take that book, they adopt it, and then before you know, it'll push all the way up, and eventually the big states will have to come in and do the same thing. So I think they're going to be successful.
Awesome. And speaking of the big states, China. So it seems to me over the past few years, they're hot and cold, and they're essentially they're flipping levers right now. So as we all know, the situation in China is Bitcoin, blockchain, you can't do it. It's prohibited. So from your research, when are they going to flip the switch in the other direction? Because for me, it seems like is this really just a tool just being played differently overseas for maybe, let's say, the CCP leaders to make money from this, so to say? You know, how do you go from a country that's, let's say, mining 67% of the Bitcoin, you flip the switch in the other direction, you're causing miners to, leave and go to other countries? Is there some sort of long game being played here?
I think it's a really long game. If anybody understands China, they don't play in the 1-2 year game. They
Right.
play in the decades game, right? They're going for 30, 50 years. And so I think that they're trying to set up themselves to operate with their digital currency. There's what they call a CBDC, central bank digital currency.
Right.
That's what they're trying to push for. I think that they're going to wind up realizing that they went down this very long experimental trail, and they're going to have to come right back to Bitcoin eventually. So it might not be the next 10, 20 years, maybe in 30 or 40 years they'll have to come back. But I believe they too will eventually adopt the Bitcoin standard because everything is interconnected globally. The financial systems is. So I think China, because they have their walled gardens and they can do their own thing, they have
Right.
their internet, they have everything. They can play that game for now, but eventually I think they'll have to come back and play a game with the rest of the world. And I think the rest of the world is going to adopt the Bitcoin standard faster than China will.
Awesome. And when it comes to China, I don't think anything they do from a policy point of view is accidental. So, first seeing the news, whether it was this year or years before, I'd hear outrage. What are they doing? Or, this is going to be like essentially, shooting themselves in the foot. On the other hand, it seems like maybe they kind of dropped the ball a little bit in this long-term planning, or maybe over preparation or over preparing for maybe the type of blockchain or crypto structure they want to set up in the future.
Yeah, to be honest with China, and I watched the video, and this actually caught me off guard a little bit. There's a guy by the name of Jack Chappelle, Canadian kid. He does some really great historical YouTube videos, and he did one on China, and it happened to be talking about. It wasn't anything to do with Bitcoin, but the correlation shocked me. It was about these ships that they had that wasn't allowed into Chinese ports because Australia had badmouthed China about the COVID virus. Well, he
Okay.
took all the way back and talked about when China decided to get rid of the sparrow because the sparrow was eating the crops. Well, when they used to pay people to go out and kill all the sparrows, and they literally ridded the country of sparrows. The problem with that is the sparrows ate locusts, and now there was nothing.
And now the locusts are munching on all this.
They wiped them out completely, right? So
Wow.
they're saying what's happening now is that these container ships that has coal for the country, they won't let them in. Well, they have a power problem in China right now. This is why they're getting the miners out of there, because they don't have the power to actually allow them to do this mining. They're using up a resource which they don't have a lot of. So I think this is what's happening. I don't think China wanted to kick the miners out. I think they had to kick the miners out, which is a totally different perspective to look. And I was like, I wonder if that's what's it. I don't know if that's it or not, but I was like, that could be it. Because we've seen the same thing happen over in Russia. They're kicking miners out.
Right.
It's a power problem.
Yeah. See, everybody, this is why I would suggest to anybody, please follow the Crypto Curator. Often in life, many of the most important details are in the nuance.
That's right.
I have to say, seriously. And this is why, talking and discussing these things, I find it very enlightening and very enriching. And kind of moving on off of that, non-fungible tokens. We're seeing the craze in art. We're seeing pieces, and people are just saying, well, they're just JPEGs that cost 10 million plus. This is really becoming its own booming economy in of itself. Now, NFTs, they're related, but obviously not the same as, cryptocurrency. What are your thoughts on NFTs? Are they a fad, or do you think they'll really be an enduring trend?
Yeah, no, listen. NFTs has changed the game like nothing else. And I thought Bitcoin and digital currency was it, and NFTs has taken this thing way up. And here's the reason why. What NFTs are? They're non-fungible tokens. If you've heard that word before, fungible, this is the origin of I don't know. But with money, you don't want money to be fungible, which means that you want you want money to be fungible. You want every dollar to be a dollar. You want, no matter
Right.
what, if you take a dollar to Starbucks, it's a dollar there, it's a dollar at
Right.
some store. With NFTs, they're not fungible, which means that each piece of paper is different, like literally distinctively different. So what this has given us the ability to do, especially for artists, it's allowed them to not need a middleman, and they can now sell their art directly to the public, and the public can verify that that's an authentic piece of art from that artist. In addition to this, if you take it from the art or the music world, look at ticketing. Like Mark Cuban said, and Mark Cuban was the first one I heard talk about it, blew my mind. Mark Cuban says, what if I was to make every ticket to the Mavs game an NFT? Here's what I could do. One, I don't have to print out tickets over and over again. I now produce that NFT, and that lets you into any Mavs games as long as you pay with that NFT. I know who you are. I know where you sit. I can give you a gift bag when you come in, but if you decide to sell that ticket to someone else, I get royalties because of the smart contracting feature.
Right.
It's like, this is crazy. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
This has been a really great and transformative year. And I have to say, when it comes to NFT art, well, to backtrack a little bit, if I think of traditional art, it's always seemed to me as a very cloistered, exclusive, and almost aristocratic kind of industry. And I do feel that there's probably many great artists out there who never got their break, because I think, like any network, it's like who you know a lot of times. And I've seen NFTs out there. I've seen such incredible pieces of art, of NFT art out there. And I'm thinking to myself, this might just bring in another era of great artists, because they don't have to face any of these institutional, bureaucratic, or you could say even financial barriers just to kind of get their foot in the door. If you're an artist and you're an up-and-coming artist, if you have a good Telegram group, if you have a good Discord group, you got a good social media presence, I mean, you have a really good shot of making it and making it big.
Yeah, not only that, some of this artwork that we're watching put together that's NFTs is not selling for $5-10. This is something selling for like 10 million. It's
right.
Nuts. Yeah.
Right. Like, for instance, like, Snoop Dogg is effectively an art curator now. He's been amongst the largest collectors of NFT art. And frankly speaking, his collection is most likely just going to keep appreciating over time.
That's right.
To say the very least. So it seems like, it seems to me almost like, I guess, the traditional art world is like a country club. It's very aristocratic, very cold, and very distant. And now it seems like with NFT art, you can really go in as an outsider, do your research, plan, and buy at the right time. You can really get your foot in the door. Not even just foot in the door. You can get a membership at a huge discount in this kind of industry.
It's true. And we're watching a lot of developments in that space. As a matter of fact, for my afternoon brief that's going to push out, it says why the world's largest museum is embracing NFT technology. You're starting to get the art museums embracing this. People are actually going to start, I believe this is going to happen. You'll have digital displays throughout a museum, and it'll be displaying NFT art. And again, the art that's on that screen can be verified on the blockchain that actually came from the artist. You may be able to scan a QR code and learn different things about the artist. There's so much you can do with digital technology. It just blows my mind. And again, I haven't even went down the rabbit hole in NFTs myself. Just looking at the headlines alone is like, wow.
Right. And, doing my research, one of the biggest problems in the art world is art fraud. There are many individual artists out there and many processes that can create a Van Gogh, or a related or a Rembrandt or a similar type of, I guess you can say, art piece. And there is no simple, cost efficient, finite way to really tell something is a fraud until really it's too late a lot of times. And now with NFT art, there is a digital signature, a mark of authenticity on the spot immediately since day one. I am particularly excited, and I'm really excited to see the amount of artists and the quality of art that's going to be coming out. In fact, right here in New York City, there is an NFT art gallery. I'll get the name for you right after this show, but it looks awesome, to say the very least. And I think I'm going to start checking those out.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing, and for some people they don't. And this is another thing too. I think you're watching a complete shift in the way that people think and look at things. The millennials and beyond generations, the way that they, I mean, the art that cypherpunks, right? This
Cyberpunks,
Roblox,
yeah.
oh, and this Minecraft view, this pixelated imaging. I mean, this stuff matters to them and they get it. Whereas other people are like, what is that? That doesn't look good. But to them, it makes all the sense in the world. And we're watching this, the metaverse. We're watching. It's just it's incredibly complex. Like I tell people, if you go back to the 1800s and you saw the way they lived, if they saw the way we live now, they go, man, that's wild, that's crazy. Can you imagine what we're going to say is wild and crazy?
Right. Yeah, what we're going through right now is truly for the history books. And, you mentioned Cyberpunk's the artist, and I'm a huge movie buff. So growing up, I loved movies like Blade Runner, The Fifth Element, Johnny Mnemonic, Virtuosity, that whole cyberpunk genre. And I kind of wanted to posit a quasi-philosophical question for you. Did COVID-19 reveal the cracks in society, in our money, in our health that maybe in many ways brought, and maybe to a faster rate, this blockchain revolution that we're seeing right now?
It did. It did in ways that and again, rather this is the great reset as the IMF and the World Economic Forum is pushing or something. However, this whole thing came about, it did. It accelerated things. I used to tell people all the time about, oh, let's do a video conference, or hey, let's get on a video call. Nobody wanted to. That's all we're doing today, right? I mean, like, you ask somebody to meet up, oh, we could just do a video call. It's like, what? This is crazy. Yeah. I think COVID really sped this up, and it showed us what's possible with technology where we didn't see that before. And had COVID not happened, we still wouldn't be pushing the bounds of technology the way we are right now because we didn't have to.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it seems to me this surge of blockchain startups, blockchain technology, and cryptocurrency, I think it's taken the blinders off a lot of people, but I think it's also made entrepreneurs more daring and more courageous, within all of this chaos that we're seeing right now. Because it seems like maybe with the system that has been built, I do feel a lot of the sentiment was, okay, well, this is just the way things are. Now it seems like we're in an era, anything is possible.
It is. It's lowered that barrier to entry to being an entrepreneur, being a solopreneur, or whatever. It's literally dropped it down to the floor because, listen, if you have a computer and you know how to do art, or you have a computer and you can understand technology like digital assets, just digital assets alone can actually completely change the trajectory of your financial future. If you paid attention back in 2008, 2009, 10, when this thing first came out, if you were snatching up hundreds of Bitcoin at a time and you held on to them, like you're on a yacht somewhere, right?
Right. Yeah, right. And you know what's really funny? I see this on Instagram all the time. Those old memes from like 2015, 2016, somebody who bought like a few thousand Bitcoins, it went down a little bit and they dumped it, And I always see these memes being like recycled and reposted. So I can only imagine how bad maybe some of those individuals are feeling now for, let's say, not holding, so to say.
Yeah, it's hard. Again, a lot of people are like, man, if I would have had, 1,000 Bitcoin back in the day, I'd still be holding. I'm like, no, you wouldn't. And
no, you wouldn't have. Yeah, you would have been like everybody else.
The moment it hit $1,000, you're out.
Right. Now, I'd imagine right now what we're going through in this, I think maybe a potential golden age that we may see, not everything's going to be perfect. So I do think a subset of this area that's a little bit more controversial is the metaverse. To me, it seems like it has a tremendous amount of promise, but the metaverse is going to essentially be the next evolution of our reality and the way we interact with the world, our daily and everyday local economy, and everything else. What are your thoughts on the metaverse and the direction of society going in that direction?
It's going to be very tricky and it's going to be very controversial because the technology really does open up a whole wealth of things that we can do. However, it's a double-edged sword. There's also a lot of surveillance that can be done. There's a lot of big brotherish type stuff that happens
Right.
and a lot of control, especially when you look at Meta that has just now put
Right.
$10 billion to work on the metaverse. That's not a small number of people. If someone's saying
Right.
they're going to put $10 billion into building the metaverse, they're playing for keeps. And so Mark
Right.
Zuckerberg is looking for ways that he can bring all of the attention toward Meta. And so it's going to give us the bill. And I believe it was Bill Gates who said the business meetings will be held in the metaverse within the next 3 to 5 years. And I
Wow.
agree with them. I think corporations are going to understand what the metaverse is and they're diving in. And marketers are going to dive in. And before you know it, that's why I think it was Snoop Dogg that bought some land in the metaverse, and now a neighbor paid
Yeah.
$450,000 to buy land right next to him. Right? It's
Yeah.
crazy, but it's coming. I think it's coming. How it's going to look when it's there, I don't know.
Well said. And so would it be fair to say, kind of summarizing what you just said, the
Mhm.
whales, this part of blockchain, the metaverse, is going to be the most vulnerable to whales, to say the very least.
I believe so. I think people. So let me put it this way: if you have wealth, you're going to be the first persons and the first people that are going to get into the metaverse, and that's going to benefit most from it. But at the same time, the metaverse also gives the ability for those who don't have wealth to also get in and to
Right.
establish a presence and do whatever, because it doesn't cost you a lot of money to get into the metaverse. That part is super easy. To do something once you're there, that's where it's going to be hard. And again, we have the same problem we always have: the have and the have not. The haves are going to have it all, have nots are going to struggle.
Wow. And as we're kind of wrapping this up, you've created, in my feeling, a wonderful platform. Like I said, you were one of the major individuals I saw on social media when I first came into the space as an entrepreneur and as a podcaster. And I've been following your research and materials for quite a while. So I absolutely love what you're doing. I hope you keep it up. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what else you unearth and what other nuances. And I guess you could say the tiny details you end up unearthing and getting into the weeds too. But I would ask you, what advice would you give to anybody in this day and age who wants to, let's say, start their own business, make their own mark in blockchain, in cryptocurrency? Because even now, whether it's, let's say, institutions or even your own family or your own community, there is still a lot of, okay, this stuff's not going to work out. This stuff's like alchemy. This stuff is probably like a front for Ponzi schemes. There is still a lot of negative noise out there. So I think for anybody to do anything of substance in this area, you have to have a lot of consistency, a lot of grit, and I think you really do also have to believe in yourself quite a bit. But we're all human. We all get tired. We all get stressed out. We all get frustrated. So what advice would you give to anybody out there who's, let's say, maybe trying to do what you do or trying to do just something in this space?
Yeah, it all starts with an idea, right? If you have some kind of idea, a gentleman once told me, he says, if you can find a way to create value and make a difference, then money takes care of itself. And I believe the same thing happens with anything. Find a way to create some value, find a problem that you can solve. That's what I sort of did, right? As I was looking at this space, I got to thinking about what I did in a former business, and that we produced news briefs for Fortune 500 companies and part of Capitol Hill, and said, okay, they need to understand what's happening around them with their competitors, with their industry, and we need to put that information together for them. And so that's what I did with the Crypto Curator. And so what I would tell anybody that's in this space, if you are a developer in particular, your road is just wide open. You can do anything because you guys are in high demand. But even if you're not a developer, just understanding that this space is going to give you an opportunity, just keep an open mind, keep trying, and don't ever give up. Just because one thing you tried doesn't work, keep going. Just keep going. Keep hammering at it. You'll eventually
Right.
figure it out.
Well said. And I think this is a perfect note to end on. Paul, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. And as a fan and as a live streamer, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you on, especially since following your work for probably about close to 2 years. So for me and my journey going through this, your material, your research certainly had a part in that. So listen, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. I'm going to continue following the Crypto Curator, and I would recommend to anybody, follow the Crypto Curator, because often the turning point, that pivot, that kind of makes the difference between success and failure. Sometimes it's always in those smaller details. It's in those subtleties. It's in those nuances. And what I can say about your site, Paul, you go into those nuances and you cover those nuances. And that is something I don't see so much of out there. I see people follow Bitcoin price movement and only that. I see some kind of ridiculous skits from influencers out there. But I think for anybody who really wants to thrive and learn in this space, having a hub of information that you can really take in easily and take in an efficient way, that is absolutely necessary, because there's so much noise out there. And I think this has been a great filter for all that noise in this space, Paul. So thank you so much.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And I'll just say one last thing. And for those that visit the site, you'll see some of this as the new year kicks off. I am going to be launching, if you've ever heard of a community platform, it's a SMS type platform. And what I'm trying to do, and for those people that really do get overwhelmed by all the information, hey, you can come to my community and I'll have the number published on my website stuff. And you can say, hey, I want to know just about Cardano. Right? Any news comes out about Cardano, make sure I'm the first person that gets it. And I'm going to be sending out text throughout the day as I see that content come across, and you'll get that right in your text. No special apps. You can just click on it and you can read it. So I'm trying to make sure I can get the information a little bit more digestible by people, but I do want them to understand that I'm a trusted source. I'm not interested in trying to make money off of you folks. I'm interested in you people reading what I read, watching what I watch, and listening what I listen to.
Perfect. And I'll definitely be watching out for that as well. Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome weekend. And by the way, this absolutely made my day today as well. So like I said, it's surreal being a fan and a follower of Crypto Curator. So
thanks, Adam. I really appreciate that, man. You have a good channel as well. You're doing a great job at interviewing a lot of really good people in this space.
Oh, thank you.
People really do need to understand this is the way we're all going to learn, by people like yourself, helping people understand who to listen to and where to go, because that's what it's about. And the more we all do it, the more these people are going to get it. And they're going to come back to you and they're going to be like, hey, thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye.